Well, again, we're going to talk with Tom Steever from the Brownfield Network. And Tom, once again, welcome and thanks for coming by and visiting with us today.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. It's great to be here.
Well, we talked a little bit earlier, a little bit about your history. Of course, you grew up in South Dakota and got involved with ag and ag radio and stuff. But just here recently, in fact, just last week, you were up in Kansas City for the Farm Broadcasters Convention. How did that all go, and what did you find out up there?
It went very well. And first of all, it's on my mind. I was just talking to Dwayne about this and mentioned this, but I know in the past, as you've had the other Meet the Broadcasters on, one of them is Ron Hayes.
Yes.
And I want to send congratulations out to Ron, because he was one of two people that was inducted into our Hall of Fame on Thursday. So he is now a member of that august group of the National Association of Farm Broadcasting. So congratulations to Ron in that regard. And yes, we did have a good meeting. For one thing, it's always nice to get together and to rub elbows with those people who you've known for a long time. And I always learn something from other people in the business of farm broadcasting, so it's nice to get out there.
Yeah, I know we've had Ron Hayes here. Mike Adams from AgriTalk has been here with us as well. And, of course, Mike based here in the Midwest. But Ron, and it's just right across, just to the southwest in Oklahoma. But you don't have to go too far in Oklahoma, and the world of agriculture changes quite a bit. And just to be able to visit him with what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, you learn something new all the time.
You do. And, of course, when we're talking about, here we are at the Joplin Regional Stockyards, but the stockyards in Oklahoma City is a whopper when it comes to selling feeder cattle. They sell them every week in, week out. They do a lot of business there. So Ron is very good at the business of feeder cattle and how they sell.
And that's one thing that's very fortunate with all the folks that was at the convention last week, that we are able to have those types of resources to help us keep up with what's going on day to day in the world of agriculture.
That's right. And, when you all get together, you have farm broadcasters actually from coast to coast. We have them from California up to New York, to I know there's some in New York, and there's up and down the East Coast in Florida, farm broadcasters there. You always learn something about the region that they're from and what they grow there and how they report on it, mainly because we're in the business of informing people, so it's nice to learn that.
Yeah, because everyone kind of gets in their own little world from time to time, and you forget that we're all in this. It's one big family from, as you said, from coast to coast, and everyone involved in the same business.
Yes, yeah, and we, even in Brownfield's footprint, we go from the western edge of Nebraska to the eastern edge of Ohio. We're in 10 states that comprise the Corn Belt. And so even in that, although we are the Corn Belt, we grow a lot of corn and soybeans, yes, but there is canola, there are cranberries, there are cattle, as evidenced here, a lot of that, cattle, hogs, poultry in that footprint, and a lot of other crops to boot. So there's a lot to pay attention to.
There's so much going on right now, and it starts at the national and federal level and right on down. What are some of the hot topics that you guys are reporting on?
Well, it wasn't that long ago, and we were reporting on the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill it just tended to go on and on and on. The debate on that Farm Bill seemed to be never ending. But now, a lot of it is the weather and the markets, and there are issues too. The waters of the U.S. issue continues to be with us, because even though it's been passed, there are those who intend to keep challenging that rulemaking from the Environmental Protection Agency to a higher level now, because they're dissatisfied with how it's been with its implementation. So they intend to keep on that. So that's an issue that stays with us quite a bit. And there are always a lot of other issues, again, that we're working with, paying attention to, that are in front of us constantly. And it seems like whenever there's something that goes by the wayside, there is something else to report.
And it's nice that to be able to have a resource like Brownfield to keep up with, because as we talked about, you get caught up in your day-to-day work, whether out in the field or working with your livestock. You don't have time to keep up with that information on a constant basis, but that's what you guys at Brownfield do. You keep up to it and then report it, and then they can catch your news feeds throughout the day and be able to keep caught up on what's going on.
Yeah, I heard you promoting what our midday news and livestock capsule that we put out, and we do try to keep people informed in probably a very short amount of time, as quickly as we can, to keep people there and then to get them back to regular programming again. But yes, there is a lot to pay attention to. And one thing that, and I've been interested here in talking to people at the market too, is that the feeder cattle market has gone down quite a bit here in the last couple of weeks. So we've seen that. We've seen the fed cattle market go down, and cattle just, it's just kind of going through. I don't know if you'd call it a market correction, but the thing seems to be going down. The more meat that's on the market, so that's another thing to pay attention to. We're getting the harvest wrapped up. It's about wrapped up right now, and so we're paying better attention also to how much is being harvested. And we've learned that there's a pretty good harvest as you go up and down the Midwest. Not so much in Missouri, because in Missouri here we had those 1.5 million acres that did not get planted, and that has been a burden for Missouri producers. And the corn harvest and soybean harvest, in a lot of cases, probably a little better than what was expected, but still not as good as it has been in other years. But as you go to other parts of the region, again, they had a pretty good harvest. Where I'm from, in South Dakota, I went there. I was just there the week before last, and they said that they had been getting a better harvest, maybe the best harvest that they have ever had in a lot of instances there. So it varies from one end to the other.
Yeah, and I've seen right here in our immediate area too. You were talking about the beans. Some of the soybeans that were put out really, really late are having a really hard time getting the moisture content out of them and reaching maturity. And I don't know whether it's just because they were put out so late or the type of fall we had, but the farmers were hoping for a real good hard freeze, and we haven't really had one yet to really dry those beans up. And I've seen there's still a lot of beans standing in the field, and I don't know whether they're ever going to be able to get them out or not.
There's always that fear, and I think a lot of that, a lot of what was learned about the yield on soybeans, the yield was hurt because soybeans perform a lot according to what the August is going to be like. Well, in this case, they're late planted beans, so it was August and September. We had that rain shut off in September,
right.
So we just did not get the maturity, the yield that a lot of producers were hoping for.
I know another thing here in our area, we've got a lot of poultry industry in here too, and of course the bird flu thing was a big issue. It kind of seems like it dodged a lot of the four-state region. We had a couple instances over in Kansas. I believe only one here in southwest Missouri and one down in Arkansas. It seems like most of that has been confined to the north, but that's something they have to be aware of constantly.
It is, because although when the weather warmed up, a lot of that tended to go away, so we didn't hear about it, but we were even warned at the time that as soon as it cools off, it might crop up again. We're keeping our fingers crossed. It hasn't yet, but we'll see what happens.
We get the hog market report from Brownfield as well, and that's something here in our immediate listening area has really dwindled in recent years. I can remember when I was growing up, we always had hogs and we raised feeder pigs, but you start seeing those feeder pig operations, just the local guy, start to disappear. They'd still keep a few pigs here and there, maybe just for personal use or just whatever, and it's been more into the larger hog farming operations, but starting to see a little bit of resurgence in the hog market. Have you seen that in other parts of the country as well?
Well, in hog numbers, because the numbers are there, for one thing. Let's just make it clear. The numbers are there, but the number of producers are fewer, because you have producers that are very, very big that are producing a lot of hogs.
Right.
So we still have, there's a lot of demand, well, more demand than ever for pork. So yes, hogs are being raised, but the number of producers that have 25 sows are dwindling fairly quickly, or have been. But we are seeing, what's nice about it is that there are some people who say, my gosh, there's a market for Berkshire hogs. There's a market for Tamworth hogs. And they're raising they may just have 20, 25 sows in that regard, And so they're doing a niche market. They're making some very high quality pork products and getting a premium for it. So yes, we do have those producers.
And that's something that's really people are starting to take hold of too. What you just mentioned, the niche market thing, you're starting to see it at farmers markets here in our area. The hog people, and then also I know there's a cattle farm, ranch operation east of Springfield. He raises and specifically sells to a couple of markets right there in Springfield. They're starting to look for that different avenue to be able to get in, and they're making things profitable that way.
Of course, and I do know people personally that actually raise, uh, they raise, feed, butcher, and sell and market personally market their own beef at farmers markets. So there you have a very small vertical integration, but it's still on a pretty small scale.
One thing that has helped folks in the world of agriculture here in recent months, and they're hoping it continues, is the fuel prices have come down, and that's so important when you're out there operating the big equipment that uses that diesel fuel. And of course, all of these trucks that we've got sitting out in the parking lot today here at the Joplin Regional Stockyards, that just helps in the long run.
Yeah, it is. You know, when I was in the livestock business, um, our feeder cattle prices were nowhere near what they are now, and you see a buck and a half a pound on some of these feeder cattle. You wonder how it can be done. Well, in some cases, money is being lost. It is not cheap. Farming is not cheap. It costs a lot to raise what's being raised. When you figure in seed inputs, the chemicals that are necessary to raise a crop, and then, as you said, fuel adds a lot to it too. Those inputs are are making life interesting on the bottom line when it comes to farming because um, even though we have plenty of food, it costs a lot to get it to the table.
Well, we're here at the Joplin Regional Stockyards today, and of course, we've got a good turnout of folks here today selling cattle at the feeder cattle sale, and that's something that's on a lot of people's minds right now as well. Just a year ago, we were having record high cattle prices. Everyone was wondering at when the market would start to correct itself. Well, as you pointed out, we started to see that in the last month or so. Did have a little bounce there at the end of October, not a big one, but a little one, but now things are starting to slide again. They're saying, a lot of forecasters, that this might continue to the end of the year, but they're saying once we get into 2016, it might level out or actually start to come back up a little bit. Are you hearing that same type of thing?
Yeah, in the same type of thing because for a long time since that drought, which started to blossom from Texas up northward and affected a lot of cattle country, there just wasn't the numbers. They were slaughtering a lot of cows, so we were just getting a lot fewer head of cattle, and we're still. It takes a while to rebuild a cattle herd, so that is happening. That is happening slowly, and there are differing opinions on actually how many cattle are out there. But the last count of cattle indicates that there is some rebuilding of the herd, but again, it takes a while to do. So with that rebuilding of the herd, we're going to get a lower market. And yes, we do. We do see that pressure on the market. There's still demand for feeder cattle out there. That was pointed out to me today, and you can see it also because people are buying feeder cattle. They need feeder cattle. They just need them at a lower price.
Yeah, because I saw a report here a week or so ago, Cattle Facts had put out, and they said they were looking at 800,000 to a million head maybe added to the herd just in 2015. But they said that sounds like a lot, but then when you start looking at how many were lost in the 2011 and 2012 drought, you're looking somewhere between 4 and 6 million were taken out of the herd. So that shows you how much they has to be put back in just to get back to where they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Correct. Yeah, it may seem like a lot are being added, but it's not. It's not quite. We're not quite where we were. It'll take some more rebuilding to get it back to where we were.
And you can see that and hear that from the cattle producers here today and around our area. They're all very aware of that, and they're all working very hard, not only to make some profit for themselves and sell cattle, but also to build their herds back up.
That's
too.
right. They are. You're seeing a lot of them retain heifers. They're not. Some of those heifers that normally would have gone to town as feeder cattle to be fed out, they're keeping them back and breeding those heifers back. So they're just making them part of the cow herd again.
Yeah, we just talked about in the ag calendar at the top of today's show, a big cow and bull replacement sale coming up this Saturday here at Joplin. They had one back in September, and it was so successful. Here we are just a month and a half later, and they're having another one.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to see a lot of interest in that breeding stock.
Well, we are live here today at the Joplin Regional Stockyards. Again, it's our Meet the Broadcasters event. Tom Steever from the Brownfield Network is here with us today. We want to thank some of our sponsors, Fortner Farms, Glenn's Bull Rental, Grassworks Manufacturing, Henderson Ranch, Hunt's Gun and Hardware, and Miller for having us over today. And again, if you are here or planning on coming by today, we've got some booklets out with information. All of our advertisers are listed there about their services that they offer and contact information. And we'll be distributing these booklets around the area here in the next few weeks as well, in case you are unable to come by and visit with us today. We need to take a little bit of a break, and we'll be back with more Farm in the Four States here in just a moment. With us, and Tom, we've had a lot of fun visiting with you today, finding out a little bit more about you. I know people hear your voice on the radio every day here on KRMO, so it's kind of nice to get to know the person that you've been listening to all the time.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's good too for me to get out and meet people like yourself who are affiliates, good affiliates that we depend on to get our programming out to the listeners.
And of course, you do a lot of the traveling around, not only here in the United States. You travel abroad and check out things all over the world.
So. Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I have another one coming up. As a matter of fact, I'll be checking out the canal itself. I'll be down in a couple of weeks. I'll be going down to check out the Panama Canal.
Yeah, we were talking about beans earlier. I know a couple of guys here right in our area that are heavily involved in the soybean market in South America, so they depend on that canal quite a bit.
Absolutely, because that canal links the Atlantic to the Pacific and vice versa, and so therefore it makes possible the logistics that get our products to the places they need to be.
Well, the nice thing in visiting with you today about what you've heard from other parts of the country and just at the convention last week, the Farm Broadcasters Convention and stuff, everyone's still, even though we've had our ups and downs, especially here in the last 10 years or so, everyone's still with a very positive attitude as we head forward as we're getting close to 2016 now.
I think that's the significant part, and that's, that farmers are optimists. If nothing else, they're optimists, and they always wait until next year. If that wasn't the case, where would we get our food? Because they would be quitting on their first bad year. It doesn't happen that way. They're persistent and they keep at it, and they do a good job of it.
Just like the people here today at the stockyards in the cattle business, they went through some tough times, had a really good 2014 to help them kind of rebound a little bit, and now things are starting to level out. But again, as we talked with people here today and in the last few weeks, they're looking forward to a new year as well.
It happens in cycles, and that cycle is that it's on the downhill side right now, but they're confident that again it'll be on the uphill side, and they'll be seeing some black ink again.
Well, again, we thank you very much for coming and visiting with us today, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again sometime.
Sammy, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, believe me. I really enjoy being here.
Again, that's Tom Steever from the Brownfield Network, and you hear him daily here on KRMO with the Brownfield Report. So one more thing.